Welcome to Conspiracist. Today, we're diving into something pretty heavy. A really serious proposition, actually. It's this idea, this hypothesis, that governments, maybe worldwide, are intentionally hiding evidence. Evidence about, well, what some people are calling the rise of Cyber Armageddon. So the suggestion is a deliberate cover-up, keeping the public in the dark about potentially catastrophic cyber threats.
It's a huge claim, absolutely.
Definitely. So our mission here for this deep dive is to look at this objectively. We want to evaluate the information out there, the reasoning behind this hypothesis, and we're going to keep it strictly neutral, very analytical.
Right. And to do that properly, I think we first need to get a handle on what Cyber Armageddon actually means. What are we talking about when we use that term based on the scenarios in our sources?
Okay, good starting point. Let's unpack that. Yeah. Cyber Armageddon. What sort of large-scale disruptions are we thinking about? What do the sources point to?
Well, the sources paint a picture of events that are really far-reaching, systemic consequences. We're talking about the potential collapse of critical infrastructure, things like power grids.
Okay.
The 2015 attack in Ukraine on their energy infrastructure. That's a pretty sobering real-world example of the kind of vulnerability we mean. And similar worries exist for the U.S. grid.
Right. That Ukraine incident was pretty significant.
It was. And then there are attacks targeting financial systems, hypothetically leading to widespread failures, ATMs not working, major disruption to the Federal Reserve, Wall Street operations, impacting hospitals, businesses, everything on a massive scale.
Wow.
Beyond just that, a Cyber Armageddon scenario could mean widespread disruption of essential services, things like payment processing, clearinghouses, settlement systems, the stuff that keeps things moving.
The absolute fundamental.
Exactly, with obviously severe knock-on effects for national security and public safety. So it's not just isolated hacks we're discussing, it's cascading failures across vital sectors.
So this is way beyond typical cybercrime data breaches. This is something that could genuinely destabilize society as we know it.
That's the implication, yes.
But it's also important to keep perspective, isn't it? The sources also suggest we shouldn't just leap to the absolute worst-case scenario.
Absolutely. That's crucial. We need to distinguish this Cyber Armageddon concept from the more, let's say, routine cyber threats. Espionage, lower-level disruptions. One source specifically mentions that a lot of cyber conflict actually happens below that catastrophic threshold. Right. And another source reminds us about history. Societies have shown, considerable resilience when faced with big shocks before.
Like what?
Well, think about 9/11. Horrific, of course, but it didn't cause a lasting total collapse of U.S. society. Or look further back, strategic bombing campaigns in wars haven't always succeeded in breaking a population's will.
Good point.
So we do need to be careful not to just automatically assume these complex, interconnected modern systems are incredibly fragile and will just shatter at the first sign of trouble.
That's a really vital piece of context. Okay, so with that definition, serious, systemic, but maybe not inevitable collapse, let's think about the concealment hypothesis. Why might a government, hypothetically speaking now, want to hide information about this kind of threat emerging? What could be the motives? Even if our sources don't explicitly confirm concealment is happening.
Right. We're exploring possibilities here, staying hypothetical. One potential driver, simply preventing panic, maintaining social order. One source actually notes that disaster planning sometimes works on the assumption that the public might become paralyzed in a major crisis.
Oh, okay.
So governments might worry that if everyone knew just how vulnerable critical systems were to extreme cyber threats, it could trigger mass panic, hoarding, breakdown of functions.
That makes a certain kind of sense. What else?
Another angle is avoiding undermining public confidence. Confidence in the infrastructure itself and in the institutions that run it.
You mean like people losing faith that the lights will stay on or that their money is safe?
Exactly. If people believed the power grid or the financial networks were constantly teetering on the brink of cyber collapse, well, public trust could evaporate pretty quickly.
And I imagine there's a straightforward national security reason, too.
Precisely. Don't advertise your weaknesses. By limiting public knowledge of specific vulnerabilities, governments might hope to stop adversaries from exploiting them, especially with this trend of IT systems merging with OT systems, operational technology.
The systems controlling physical stuff.
Right, in critical infrastructure. That convergence, which one source highlights, creates whole new attack surfaces. Governments might be very hesitant to publicize those evolving weak spots.
Makes sense. Keep your cards close to your chest.
And maybe finally just maintaining a perception of control. projecting an image of national security. Even if the reality behind the scenes is maybe more uncertain or complex, that could be seen as strategically important in itself.
Okay, so those are plausible, if still hypothetical, reasons for secrecy. But our sources also paint a very different picture, don't they?
Yeah.
One with maybe increasing transparency and a lot of active work on these threats.
Yes, there's quite a bit of evidence that points the other way, challenging that idea of systematic concealment.
Such as?
Well, for one, we're seeing more reporting and analysis of cyber threats coming from government agencies themselves. For instance, one source talks about U.S. Cybercom operating within legal frameworks following international law U.S. policy. That implies accountability, right? And therefore a certain level of transparency, at least in its operations. Similarly, the NSA, obviously a lot of what they do is classified, but their known dual-role intelligence gathering and cybersecurity defense suggests they're actively grappling with the threats, not just trying to hide everything.
And it's not just government, is it? The private sector seems heavily involved.
Oh, absolutely. The cybersecurity industry is incredibly active. You've got numerous companies, threat intelligence firms, whose whole business is finding, analyzing, and then publicizing information about new threats and vulnerabilities.
They want people to know about the risks, so they buy their services, presumably.
Well, yes, there's a commercial aspect, but it means information is getting out there.
Yeah.
And government bodies like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they develop and promote cybersecurity standards, best practices. That's all public knowledge.
Right.
Plus, you have these collaborative groups, like the FS-ISAC for the financial sector, mentioned in one source. They exist specifically to share threat intelligence and coordinate responses. That's all about sharing information, not hiding it. Collective defense.
What about that statistic, I think it was from FireEye, about how long it takes to detect an intrusion? Something like 146 days on average.
Yeah, that's a relevant point. It shows there's often a lag, a window of vulnerability. But it also suggests that these things are eventually found. And often they do become public knowledge in some way, maybe through breach reports, security bulletins, news coverage.
So it contradicts the idea that major cyber events could be successfully hidden forever.
It makes it seem much harder. Yes, permanent, successful concealment looks difficult. And think about the common threats that another source lists out.
Like malware, phishing?
Exactly. Malware, including the fileless kind, sophisticated phishing, ransomware, which they worry AI might supercharge soon, supply chain attacks.
Oh, the SolarWinds.
Yes, SolarWinds, the Microsoft 365 compromises. Then you've got business email compromise, DDoS attacks, drive-by downloads, insider threats. These are all widely documented. They're discussed constantly. They're in public awareness campaigns, security training.
The focus seems to be on dealing with them, not pretending they don't exist.
That's how it appears. Understanding, mitigating, preventing. That seems to be the main thrust, not concealment.
And organizations aren't just sitting ducks, right? There are actual defenses being put in place.
Yes, definitely. There's widespread use of security tools, SIEM systems for monitoring, EDR tools on endpoints. These are designed to detect and respond. And basic best practices keeping software patched, using multi-factor authentication.
That's where you need more than just a password?
Right, multiple checks. Plus employee training. These things are actively pushed and adopted. And importantly, especially for critical infrastructure, there's often built-in resilience. Redundant systems, manual overrides, one source mentioned those specifically, ways to keep things running even if there is a cyber attack.
So, again, suggests acknowledgement of the threat, planning for it, not hiding from it.
It points that way, yes. A proactive approach to defense and recovery.
We also see quite public discussion about the costs of cyber attacks, don't we? Especially for businesses.
Absolutely. One of the sources looked at the economic and financial fallout from corporate cyber attacks. That kind of research, the public reporting of financial damage, again, suggests acknowledgement, not concealment.
Makes sense. If companies are reporting losses due to hacks, it's hardly a secret.
Precisely. And the financial industry itself. Sources from the New York Fed and the DTCC show a huge emphasis on having robust plans. Response and recovery plans specifically for large-scale cyber incidents. That level of planning, which is discussed openly within the industry, signals a very clear awareness of the risks and a commitment to tackling them transparently, at least within that sector.
Okay, but what about media coverage? One source, I think OSF, suggested that maybe attacks on military or financial targets get less mainstream press than, say, novel hacking techniques. Could that be a form of selective information control? Not quite a cover-up, but managing the narrative.
That's an interesting point. It does suggest public visibility isn't uniform. Media priorities, what's considered newsworthy, probably play a big role. Novel techniques, 0 days, they make headlines. More grinding attack on a less public-facing system might not.
So some things fly under the radar more than others.
Potentially, in terms of broad public awareness. But that difference in coverage doesn't automatically equal a systematic government plot to suppress information. Those events are still likely analyzed, reported on within cybersecurity circles, in government reports. The information is often flowing, just maybe not always on the evening news.
Okay. What about the sheer difficulty? Could you even engineer a true Cyber Armageddon without anyone noticing? The complexity must be immense.
That's another significant hurdle for any grand conspiracy theory here. As one source points out, creating malware that could simultaneously cripple diverse systems, power, finance, water, communications across different platforms, different operating systems, that's an incredibly complex technical challenge.
Right, it's not like in the movies where one virus takes down everything.
Not usually, no. And then there's the point about manual overrides. Many critical systems still have physical manual controls as a fallback, a built-in safeguard against a purely silent, complete cyber takeover.
So maybe the reason we haven't seen this Cyber Armageddon isn't because it's being hidden, but because it hasn't happened, or couldn't easily happen.
That's certainly a plausible alternative explanation. Several sources suggest exactly that. The absence of these catastrophic events might be down to a mix of things. Defense is actually working reasonably well. The sheer difficulty of pulling off such complex attacks, and maybe, just maybe, some narratives overhyping the immediate civilization-ending potential of cyber warfare.
Which kind of brings us back around to the idea of conspiracy theories themselves. Why does this specific idea, a hidden Cyber Armageddon, gain traction? What makes it appealing to some people?
Well, sources looking at the psychology behind conspiracy beliefs offer some insights. There's often a desire for control, especially when things feel uncertain or threatening.
Like finding a simple explanation for complex fears.
Exactly. Or a general mistrust of institutions, of government, of authority. And a basic human need to find explanations for big, scary events or possibilities. One model mentioned is the existential threat model. People feel uneasy or insecure and latch onto a specific threat narrative, often blaming groups they already distrust.
Gives a target for the anxiety, maybe.
Perhaps. And conspiracy theories themselves tend to have certain traits, don't they?
Like what?
Well, one source highlights how they often present their claims as the only truth, the hidden reality. They tend to raise more questions than they provide verifiable answers. They often demonize the supposed plotters, the government, or whoever, and the tone is often very subjective, emotional, rather than based on objective evidence.
Using anecdotes, maybe, instead of hard data?
Yes, or emotionally charged images or stories rather than rigorous, checkable analysis.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. Based purely on the sources we've looked at for this deep dive, what's our overall assessment of this central hypothesis? Are governments intentionally concealing evidence of a looming cyber Armageddon?
Based strictly on the information in these sources, no, there isn't direct or compelling evidence to back up that claim of a widespread, intentional government concealment. What we do see is significant and seemingly increasing activity around reporting, analyzing, and defending against cyber threats. That's happening in government agencies and very actively in the private sector.
So lots of activity, not silence.
Pretty much. Now, of course, specific details about intelligence capabilities, defensive postures, those aren't always public for obvious security reasons. That's normal.
Sure.
But the overall trend seems to be towards more awareness, more information sharing, at least within the relevant expert communities.
Yeah.
The fact that we haven't actually experienced that kind of ultimate catastrophic cyber event, well, it seems more likely explained by a combination of factors, like defenses improving, the real technical difficulty of launching such an attack, and maybe, just maybe, some past predictions being a bit overly dramatic about the immediate potential for cyber warfare to cause total collapse.
Right. That gives us a clear, objective take based on the material.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive then, what's a final thought you'd leave for our listeners to chew on?
I think it comes down to balance. It's critical to maintain a balanced perspective. Vigilance about cyber threats, absolutely essential. They are real, they're evolving constantly. But it's just as important to critically evaluate claims of vast intentional government cover-ups. We need to be able to distinguish between credible warnings, the ones based on actual evidence, and what might just be unsubstantiated conjecture or theory.
So the challenge for all of us is sorting the reliable information from the noise. understanding the real risks without falling for unfounded claims.
Precisely. How do you critically assess information about cyber risks? That's the key question, really.
A very important question indeed. Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.